Am I, am I audible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much, Sushil. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn. Good evening, everyone. I, Dr. Parul Johari, co-coordinator ATAL FDP, would like to welcome you all in this August evening. The AICTE Training and Learning Faculty Development Program on the current era of artificial intelligence in biological sciences is going to be addressed by an amalgamation of various eminent speakers from renowned institutions like IITs, triple ITs, CSIR labs, and many central and state universities. This 2-week-long FDP will be executed in hybrid mode. The online sessions would be covered by Professor Vibin Ramakrishnan from IIT Guwahati, Dr. V. Vivekanand from MNIT Jaipur, Professor H.A. Nagaraja Ram from University of Hyderabad, Professor Rajesh K. Tiwari from Amity University, Dr. Chandrakanta from University of Delhi, Mr. Bhanu Pratap Singh from CSJMU Kanpur. The hands-on sessions will be conducted by Dr. Ramakrishnan Parthasarthi from CSIR IITR Lucknow, Dr. Parul Johari from AITH, Dr. Krishna Kumar Ojha from Central University South Bihar, Dr. Firoz Khan from CSIR CMAP Lucknow, and Professor Pritish Bharadwaj from IIIT Allahabad. During this 2-week-long FDP, we will be visiting the Incubation Center of IIT Kanpur also. With this brief introduction of the ATAL FDP, I look forward to the wonderful sessions ahead. The chief of guest for this inaugural function of ATAL FDP is our very own Professor Dr. Rachna Asthana Ma'am, Director AITH. I welcome all of you in this August evening and look ahead for a wonderful session from all our speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I would now request Dr. Manish Singh Rajput, sir, coordinator at ATAL FDP, to please deliver the welcome address.
Thank you very much, Sushil. I am audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good evening to all of you. Success in creating AI would be the biggest event in the human history. Unfortunately, it might also be the last unless we learn how to avoid the risk. With these great words of the Stephen Hawkins, I, Dr. Manish Singh Rajput, Coordinator ATAL FDP and Head of Department of Biotechnology, AITH Kanpur, would like to welcome Professor Rachna Asthana Ma'am, Director AITH, and also the chief guest for the today's FDP. Professor Vibin Ramakrishnan, sir, from IIT Guwahati, all the participants and the faculties for the ATAL FDP on current era of artificial intelligence in biological sciences. This is the second FDP hosted by the Department of Biotechnology, Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Technology for Handicapped, Kanpur, in the last 2 consecutive years. The objective of the FDP is to provide a platform for a profound discussions, presentations, and hands-on sessions on the state of the art, research, development, innovations, and implementations of the artificial intelligence and machine learning in various areas of the biotechnology by the nationwide researchers. There has been a tremendous advancement and the innovations in the artificial intelligence, which is comparable to what artificial intelligence emerged traditionally. We use artificial intelligence many times during a day, often without even realizing it. Today, artificial intelligence has greatly enhanced machine learning, natural language processing, and the deep learning, such that they are enabling new developments in the drug discovery and the clinical trials, diagnostics, radiotherapy and radiology, personalized medicines, industrial biotechnology, gene editing, agriculture biotechnology, computational biology, and many more. The pace of the innovations in the biotechnology industry is quickening, and biotechnology companies are beginning to recognize the value that AI can bring to their entire business in the form of the accelerated research and development, analysis of the homologous, effective decision making, and the cost effectiveness. As academician, the responsibility to nurture complete professionals lies with us. These necessities, the knowledge of the latest trend in the fast changing technology, Faculty development program bring together people from all different geographical areas who share a common discipline or field and is found effective to extend one's knowledge. I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to the world renowned professor and the prominent researchers for having agreed to deliver the keynote session and share their knowledge during the FDP. I also wish thank our sponsors, All India Council for Technical Education, New Delhi, who have made this event possible. I would like to thank everyone who has given his or her time, energy, and ideas to assist in organizing this event. It is through the collective effort of these individuals and the organization that we can bring this FDP as a great event. I am sure that this colloque of the researchers and the experts from the academia and the industry would greatly benefit researchers, students, and faculty and help them to set roadmap for their uh, future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir,
Thank you, sir.
for your enlightening words. I now request our chief guest, Professor Rachna Asthana ma'am, Director AITH, to please grace the audience.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, ma'am.
Okay. On behalf of, good evening. On behalf of AITH family, I welcome you all for this faculty development program sponsored by AICTE. Biotechnology department is an asset to our institute. They have organized earlier one program, one FDP, and then they have organized a national level conference also in CIB. So they are adding all the jewels to the AITH Institute. Now their topic is also very relevant, the use of AI in biological sciences. So I think all of you might have done programming, might have learned programming. And when you start the programming, in the initial days, this is just I am pointing out to understand the importance of AI. When I started doing programming, so I give many instructions. I was using Java at that time. I have given many instructions, and then when during the testing phase, when I see the results, I thought, why it is giving this results? And then when I gone through step by step, getting the results at each and every step, then I realized that, oh, how dumb the machine is. It doesn't have any intelligence. It is having only logic. If you tell it 1 plus 1 is 2, so it will always give you 2. Nah. So if you want a glass of water, you say to any human, and what you have to say is just bring a glass of water. These 4 or 5 words only. But suppose you have to program a machine, then all of you must understand how many instructions, how many lines of codes are required. So the dumbness now has been removed to some extent with these artificial intelligence. But then we are also afraid of this artificial intelligence, that in future robots will overpower all the human beings. Yeah, it may happen if their artificial intelligence will become higher than our intelligence. It can also happen in future. So we have to take care of that how much intelligence is to be provided. But now we are having automatic learning, deep learning, so they can learn on themselves also. One example is modern days chat GPT, that can give you that can write the even essays, which till now we thought only humans can write that. So that power artificial intelligence has taken it. So similarly, the application of AI, they are enormous. Now we have given a machine to conduct tasks with some level of intelligence. So that some level is not limited to some level. If they are having the learning process, they know how to learn, then also they can improve their artificial intelligence. So we have to be prepared for that, because it is going to come in the future. And if you talk about biotechnology, so in human or for humanity, biotechnology is biology and technology. So biology is related with all the human beings, with the biospheres, with the all living organisms. Biotechnology is there. So the role of artificial intelligence, if you talk about it, it's enormous. Recently, I have seen algorithm AlphaFold, which is used to find the 3D structures of proteins, now which are very important from the chain of molecules. So that is very, very important. And I've learned that these proteins, they changes shapes even in microseconds of time. So getting those things is not possible with humans. Even then, humans have analyzed many such proteins, but then to analyze them in a very less amount of time, or to find their 3D structures in very less amount of time, that is possible with AI-based algorithm AlphaFold. Similarly, there are other algorithms also which are coming. So the databases for humans, the databases are enormous, because if you talk about the effect of drug on one human being, so it is the effect of drug even on one human being will be different in different situations. So if you want to produce or to develop any new drug, so you have to go through clinical trials, and then the data will be enormous. So to manage those data, these artificial intelligence is always required. So all of you must be aware of all those things. But anyway, the potential of AI is enormous, not even in the field of biotechnology, but you name the field, and then artificial intelligence will find its way in that field. So it's a current thing, and obviously it is going to help us a lot, but help us a lot till we are using it with right understanding. That is very, very important, because if it goes in the wrong hands, then it can what it can do, we can't even imagine at this stage. So I wish all the success, I wish all the best to the team for organizing FDP on such an emerging topic. All the best for its success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Before the start of FDP, I would like to request participants to kindly keep themselves muted in the during the time of when speakers are giving the lecture. There is a separate session for question and answers. So those who have queries or questions related to this session can raise their hands and ask the questions later on during the question and answer session. With this, I would now like to call upon our first speaker, Professor Vibin Ramakrishnan sir from IIT Guwahati. Professor Vibin Ramakrishnan sir is Professor of Biosciences and Bioengineering, IIT Guwahati. Dr. Vibin received his Masters in Applied Chemistry from Cochin University of Science and Technology and PhD from School of Biosciences and Bioengineering, IIT Bombay. He held roles as postdoctoral research associate at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, New York, and a faculty scientist at IBAB, Bangalore, before joining Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering at IIT Guwahati. He has about 60 publications in reputed international journals and 10 patents, including an international patent to his credit. He is the principal scientific advisor of 2 biotech companies. Dr. Vibin is the editorial board member of 2 reputed journals, Journal of Controlled Release of Elsevier and Scientific Reports of Nature Publishing Group. The Department of Biotechnology, Government of India has awarded Professor Vibin the Innovative Young Biotechnologist Award IYBA in the year 2007-8 to recognize his contributions and innovative approach in the biotechnology research. With this, sir, now I would like to call you to the dais, sir. I request you to start the session from now here onwards.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's
evening.
my pleasure to talk to you, and I assume that I am audible to everyone. Thank you.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you, the Director of AITH, Professor Rachna Asthana. And thank you, the Head of the Department of Biotechnology, and Dr. Parul and Dr. Manish, who are co-coordinators of this particular event. And they have been in touch with me for the last couple of months in order to make this event successful. And I'm hopeful that this event will be a great success. And it will be a great rewarding experience for all the students and faculty members who are contributing to this, either passively or actively. Thank you so much. Once again, let me start with by just reciting the title itself, like Canonicalization of Biological Data and a Reductionist Approach. And I have actually 3 stories to tell in this particular lecture series of sorts. I have 2 sessions. So this is the first one, and followed by around 8 o'clock, I will have another session. So I will tell one story in this lecture and 2 stories in the following lectures. Why I have opted to say stories is because storytelling is a long-standing, long-standing successful communication method been adopted by mankind for centuries. So I would like to sort of bank on to that particular approach. And I'm not going too much into the details, too much into the algorithms, too much into the methodologies, too much into the math of it. Instead, what I want to convey is that how you can conceptualize something that is probably an everyday experience, and how that concept is translated to a research project, and then a publication, and then a patentable resource, and then a technology. So this is probably the course of action of any technological advancement. So I want to discuss more within the platform of conceptualization of an idea and how it is being translated to. All right. So having said that, I would like to talk about the first concept, or the overall concept of canonicalization of biological data, a reductionist approach. Okay. So to start with, about the artificial intelligence, as the director, Professor Rachna Asthana, was talking about, over the years, what I'm more worried about is that as the machines are becoming more and more intelligent, human beings are becoming less and less intelligent of sorts. Because in my childhood, most of the arithmetic calculations, I used to have it in my mind. But now when I'm required to do something, I search for a calculator or an Excel sheet. Anyway, that's a not so pleasant side of the story. But artificial intelligence have been in use in biotechnology for almost a decade now, especially in drug design and manufacturing, genome sequencing, simulation of biological processes, etc. So because the entire discipline of artificial intelligence is being almost vehemently in use in almost all fields of science, and biotechnology is one of the biggest beneficiary in those attempts. So the need of the hour is, of course, to have new algorithms and computational methods to reduce useful information for improved predictability. First and foremost, for everything which we come across, we do one kind of an optimization or the other in our daily life. So that optimization has been extended or extrapolated in a grandest of form will make an artificial intelligence problem. All right, and in biotechnology industry, for last 2 decades or 3 decades of sorts, there are 2 specific situations where biotechnology industry is banking on the powers of computation. One is in the field of informatics, and other is in the field of computing or computational biology. So generally it is called bioinformatics and computational biology. Often these 2 terms are used synonymously rather. But I personally disagree with it, because it is not a synonym. It's a very different fields of there are very different fields of science, both in the way in which it is been conceptualized and in the way in which it is manifested. Because informatics tools, informatics algorithms, informatics platforms are always operating in a necessity, because every technology is always preceded with a requirement or a necessity for that technology. So informatics platforms are always working in a situation of enormity of data. There is plenty of data, like genome sequences, for example. So informatics always works on this data platform, this requirement of enormity of data. Whereas modeling or computing, for example, a computational biology discipline or a molecular dynamic simulation, for example, is operating on a platform of no data, because a protein folding is happening in nanosecond time scale, and no experimental device ever discovered in the history of science can record a scientific event which is even of microsecond scale. Which is even of microsecond scale, it cannot record a scientific event. So something that is happening at a nanosecond scale cannot be understood unless and otherwise it is simulated in a computational platform. So computational biology as a discipline works or operates in a situation of no data, whereas informatics operates in a situation of enormity of data. But both these technologies are already using and will be using the tools and techniques of artificial intelligence, or will be banking on artificial intelligence for its next level of progression. Okay, now coming to the conceptualization of story number 1. Almost all these 3 stories, basically we work on the concept of reductionism. Many of you are already familiar with the concept of reductionism. It's there in the Greek philosophy. It's there in even recent Western philosophies. It is there in Indian mythology as well, or Indian philosophical, what should I say, but philosophical content. It is there in the Sankhya system of philosophy by Sage Kabila. And the basic idea is somewhat like this. The whole world exists in a seed state, as a tree exists in a seed or in a causal form, because all the information that you need to grow a tree, or that a tree has, is actually encapsulated in a seed. So the seed has almost every information, all the information content of a tree, you see. So that is how this entire idea of reductionism being conceptualized. Now, the idea of canonicalization. So based on this concept of reductionism, I have framed 3 stories to tell you. And the story number 1 is about virtual activity profiling in drug discovery. Second is a structure-based barcoding of proteins. And third is a geometric evolution of a protein folding motor. In all these 3, there is an underlying sense of reductionism operative. So that is why I have decided to give this as a topic of discussion for today. All right, now let's go to the first story. So I would request all who are interested to listen to this in a story hearing mode, and not probably of something that is happening over the head. All right. So virtual activity of profiling of drug molecules by 1D fingerprinting. So that is the topic of today's discussion for the first 30 minutes or so. I would like to introduce you about my personal interest, or my brief history of my fascination with time. When I was thinking about time in my school days, like you see, one of the things that we all have learned earlier in our 2nd standard, 3rd standard, 4th standard, whatever it is 1 hour is about 60 minutes. And 1 minute is about 60 seconds. And when you ask this question about how much is 1 second, and then your teacher will not be very happy in hearing that question, probably because of his or her ignorance in knowing it. Like, the answer to that question, how much is 1 second, it took some time. About in 10+1, 11th standard NCERT textbook, you will see this information that 1 second is a time needed for a cesium-133 atom to perform 91926317770 complete unperturbed internal oscillations between 2 hyperfine levels of cesium in the ground state. So this is the definition of a second. Is that all with the time? I mean, time is a very fascinating thing, like, because each and every event that which we are going through, time is a function of it. Without time, minus time, almost nothing can take place. Even in our earlier understanding of physics, of Newtonian mechanics, as you can see it on the right side, or quantum mechanics, everything, time is a function. You see, there is nothing without time. Even the Stephen Hawking's famous book is about a brief history of time, incidentally. And one of the most profound references about time is what you can see it in Bhagavad Gita. Kalosmi logat pravarta. I'll tell you some mythical things from Indian mythology. If you happen to see Bhagavad Gita, you will. I was rather confused about the statements like "I do not have a beginning, I do not have an end," etc. Because it's very difficult for me to understand how can something that cannot have a beginning and cannot have an end. It's difficult to comprehend that. Later on, and what he essentially tried to say is that I'm devoid of space and time. So that is the whole idea. You see, the time is not a function of my existence. So when you think about time very deeply, what you can understand is that the only one thing that time is not a function of is time itself. Everything else is a function of time. And when you happen to see, get back to Bhagavad Gita, you will see this Kalosmi Lokashaya Bhavata. Kalosmi means I am time. So it is somewhat a vindication of the idea that if something can be devoid of time, it has to be the time itself. And if a person, I don't know whether you can call it a person, but if somebody claims that I am not a function of time, then he has to necessarily be the time itself. So time, as I said, is a very profound thing. It has a lot of meanings beyond human comprehension. Quite interestingly, if you think about time more, like time may be used to represent even other dimensions or metrics. You see, if you can, I don't know how long is AITH from Kanpur railway station. I just assumed it so. So if you ask a question, how long is Kanpur railway station? You can, you will probably get an answer. It's just about 30 minutes. But you see, he has quite curiously, he asked how much, how long, and you used a dimension of time to explain the length or the distance. You see, distance is not expressed in time generally in physics. For example, otherwise, light year is the measure of distance. It assumes the character of a time instead. So you will see time and its time's manifestations in almost every walks of life, even at certain instances where time need not have to be explained, so, or time need not have to be a variable. Time has been brought in for some reasons which we do not know. All right. Now this is our question, the scientific question, like can time be made use of to represent molecules? So this is the idea. This is what we are going to discuss in next 15 minutes, why and how and for what. Because before we embark into any project or any scientific discussions, any research projects, the first question that which we ask ourselves is, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of doing it? And the second question is that how do we do it? And third question, obviously, is for what? Now, I'm trying to answer the first question, why? You see, so if you try to answer the question of why we are doing this, we have to have a look into something called the drug discovery pipeline. Drug discovery pipeline is a fairly long process that involves tremendous amount of money that probably runs into about 40,000 crores of rupees from concept to a drug coming to the market. And because of that, you will see many drug companies are merging in order to meet these costs of making an altogether new drug. And the drug discovery pipeline is progressively getting dried up over last 2 decades or so. And it is a problem for the healthcare industry also, because it is now progressively becoming non-profitable for sustenance. So in order to address this problem, because most of the cost for developing a new drug molecule is actually in the later phases of drug discovery pipeline, where you are actually using chemicals, biochemicals, in vivo clinical trials, then human clinical trials. These are very expensive. The least expensive ones are the early stages of the drug discovery pipeline. So the main idea is that can we do as much as possible different stages of drug discovery pipeline in a computing machine? I used to say this time and time again in almost every forum I'm invited to, and a computer is arguably the most profound experimental device ever discovered in the history of science. Not a computational device, I mean it, experimental device. Because there is no other device can do as many experiments that a computing machine can possibly do. So the idea is, if you can do as much as possible these different phases of drug discovery pipeline in a computing machine, in a computer, by making use of new algorithms, new tools, of course, artificial intelligence, then, of course, the methods of artificial intelligence, then you can possibly bring down the cost significantly. And it directly affects two kinds of people. One, it can positively affect the sustenance of biotechnology industry, sustenance of healthcare industry. Second, it can bring down the cost of medicine for common man. So this is where artificial intelligence can really step in and contribute to the positive, to a positive effect in ultimately bringing down the cost to the common man. Okay, so the idea is to do these experiments as much as possible in a computing machine. So that is the purpose with which we are in. All right, now what is, I would like to have a slide on drug discovery. What is a drug discovery process is all about? It is about to create a molecule that preferentially binds to a protein target. And this protein target is called, the issue is that the structure of this protein target may or may not be well characterized. So in that sense, you may have to identify a molecule that can potentially go and bind to the protein target. And after binding to the protein target, it should create a physiological response in the body. So this is what is expected from a drug molecule. But there is an issue with doing this, is that where you need to have a series of optimization algorithms operative, is that, for example, a PubChem database has about 31 million molecules. So 31 million molecules has to be screened against each targets. So the challenge is to get one or few answers from this huge heap of possibilities. As I said in the beginning, either way, the way in which these are operating is two diametrically opposite scenarios. One, there is an enormity of data. Second, there is no data. So this is how these challenges, the kind of challenges in drug discovery are. So this is our problem: how to deal with such an enormous amount of molecules. So this is where the concept of canonicalization of a molecule comes in. Canonicalization is a term that is often used in the field of computer science. People who are trained in computer science will know it actually. So what we are trying to do in canonicalization of a molecule is to quantify the necessary elements or properties that we require to a mathematically amenable or computationally amenable representations. I'll show you an example. For example, if you can see something kind of called quantitative structure activity relationship is kind of an example. You can represent a bird or its strength or how much it can fly by having an idea about its wings, its muscle efficiency, and flight time. So if you have performance or flight performance, can be translated into muscle efficiency multiplied by flight time. So as you can see, the bird that is in the bottom of the page do have better flight performance. You can assume it, safely assume it, by looking at it even. Because you know that its muscle efficiency is better, its flight time is better, of course. So that is, you can say roughly, like hypothetically, it is called a QBSPR, quantitative bird structure performance relationship. I'm just saying an hypothetical scenario of sorts. Actually, there is nothing like UVSPR actually exists. I'm just saying it that way. So you can quantify the performance of flight of a bird. Similarly, you should be able to quantify the performance of a molecule by looking into the structure of that molecule, the more atomic content of that molecule, the functional groups present in that molecule. You should be able to quantitatively express it. And basically not quantitatively express it, of course, but you should be able to, present it in a mathematically amenable fashion or a computationally amenable fashion. So that is the whole idea of canonicalization. This is one such example of canonicalization way back in 1980 by David Vinicius. This is the first canonicalization attempt, actually. What he did is that he has written, he has assumed that all hydrogens are kind of assumed to be part of the structure, and took only the larger atoms, and he has written it as a string. So ethanol is written as CCO. That's it. And acetic acid is written as CC in parenthesis double bond OO. So this is like this is called Smiles representations, which is what he calls simplified molecular input line entry system. So this what it actually gives you is that it is very difficult to see remember a structure among 30 million structures. Instead, this is probably the first such attempt to convert it into a string representation. And that string, once it gets into the string kind of a representation, then it becomes more easy for a computing machine to play around. You see, so that is what I said. It becomes more computationally amenable representation. All right. Now I'm coming back to my passion about the time and time sequences. Now, at this juncture, what we thought is that can we represent molecule as a time? So that was our challenge. So that is the research project involved, or that is a kind of a fancy idea that has come up actually. So that is the concept of virtual activity profiling by 1D fingerprinting. So in this, what happened is that acetyl salicylic acid or aspirin or paracetamol, you can see that molecule there. It has the following functional groups. It has a COOH group, which we call a carboxylic acid group. Then it has a C double bond O, a carbonyl, a functional group, which is generally called as a carbonyl group, which is available generally in a ketone or an aldehyde. Then you have a methyl group, CH3. Then you have a benzene ring. So this particular molecule has 3-4 functional groups which we can identify. And imagine this particular molecule, whether it is aspirin or paracetamol, whatever it is going inside the body and creating a physiological effect. Okay. Now you can think from your common sense that this particular action is because of one or more, a contribution of one or more these functional groups, right? So these functional groups, because of this functional group, this particular molecule is going and binding to a protein target, and it is creating a physiological response. Okay. Now we know that these are functional groups. These functional groups are the reason for their activity. Okay. Is it the functional groups alone? No. Because Smiles representation only say about functional groups, maximum about functional groups, and not more than that. But that is not enough for us. We want to know how they are structurally oriented, or what is their structure, or what are their structures, and how these functional groups are oriented in space, because that is also important for its action. Because if it gets into a different structure, even though it has a different functional group, it has all these functional groups, it becomes non-active. It will not be an active molecule. We all know that, right? Anybody who works in drug discovery can understand it also. The moment, so it is not just about the presence of functional group, not just about the chemistry, but it is also about the physics of it, also about the structure of it, right? So we should have a representation, an amenable representation, a computationally amenable representation, or a canonicalization, which the individual functional groups as well as its structure being properly accounted for. So that is the whole idea. Okay. So for this, what we did is that we, as you can see on the left side of this slide, you can see a molecule. And what we did is that we assumed that this particular molecule is somewhat sitting at the center of a hole. You can imagine it this way. This molecule is sitting at the center of a hole. And this molecule is projected onto the wall of that particular hall. Okay, you can assume that it is a square wall. You can assume that it's a square room having all mirrors all around. That's easy to understand. Now this molecule is projected onto the wall. Now, if you project this molecule onto the wall, then what information you can get? You can get all these informations of functional groups present. What are the functional groups present in that particular molecule? So that is on the wall now. Not only that, it will give a two-dimensional representation of where these functional groups are actually present, right? How they are relatively oriented, but not in 3-dimension, of course, but in 2-dimension. So 2-dimensionally, you can see by looking at that wall, what are the functional groups, number one, and how they are oriented in space, number two. Okay. Now, in the next step, what we did is that we assumed that that surface is that of an analog clock, as you can see it in the picture. Now, if it is assumed as an analog clock, then I can safely say that, for example, this particular molecule, there is a COH group at 1 o'clock. There is a ester linkage at, say, 3 o'clock. There is a carbonyl group at 4 o'clock. There is a benzene ring. And then if you have another this thing at the meta position, it is functional group at 7 o'clock, etc. So you see, it's not just about functional groups. You can say their relative orientation on a clock. All right. Now, once you have that as a clock, it's a two-dimensional representation. Now we know that now almost all of us are using digital clocks, digital watches in one way or the other. So in those digital watches, you can see the time as a string, right? In that it is, the time is 7:30 and you can see it. Similarly, if you have this molecule represented as a clock in an analog clock, you should be able to write it as a string in the format of a digital clock, naturally, right? So this is how it is written. So from 3-dimension to 2-dimension as an analog clock, and from 2-dimension to 1-dimension as a digital clock. So the molecular information is canonicalized from 3D to 2D to 1D. So in this a typical pharmacophoric fingerprint, you can see at 0th time you have something called A, then again 0th time you will see G, again 6 you will have O, then at 7 you will have Q. So you may wonder, what are these? All right, you will see a table onto the right. And what I did is that almost all functional groups in organic chemistry, you all have studied organic chemistry in your schools, I'm sure. What I did is that I have represented all those organic functional groups in the form of English alphabet. For instance, thiols is T, hydroxyl group as Y, nitrogen donor as D, carboxylic acid as O. And then I came back to the clock, and now I can say that at 0th time, that means at 12 o'clock, there is A, right? A means there is an amidine group. At 6th times 6, there is a Z, which is a hydrophobic group at 6 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, there is Q. Q is an amide. At 9 o'clock, there is N, and is a nitrogen, for example. So similarly, you can write where those functional groups or atoms in the clock in the form of a string. Okay, so this is the entire attempt of reducing a molecule in 3-dimension to 2-dimension and to 1-dimension. So we were discussing about the concept of reductionism. You are reducing an information content to lesser and lesser dimensions, making it more and more amenable to a computing machine, so that all the algorithms and tools that we generally use can be employed in order to create a positive effect. So this is the whole idea. So this is what we are doing. A molecule is reduced from 3 dimension to 1 dimension. And this 1D representation is what we call a time sequence. And the advantage of this is that almost all the tools of sequence alignment that which we normally use in a bioinformatics platform can be adopted and adapted, to this particular problem. And we can compare the time sequences and find out molecules which are very similar in their chemistry and very similar in the structure. And if you can find out a molecule or a group of molecules which are very similar in its chemistry and structure, then they are likely to create similar physiological response as a drug, right? So that is the advantage, as I was saying. All alignment algorithms and tools that which we normally see in bioinformatics can be adapted in this particular problem as well. So in bioinformatics, you have amino acid sequences or nucleic acid sequences. Here you have time sequences that are representing the molecule's chemistry and molecule structure. All right. If you still don't believe it, this is the proof. What you can see it on the left is dihydrofolate reductase is a receptor. It's a very famous receptor. Folate is the ligand. And as you can see, significant alignment. And what you can see here are different drug molecules. Folate is a receptor and is the ligand, and there are different drug molecules. Some of them are actual drugs for DHFR, or some of them are not. And you can see the alignment picture. And you can easily understand that these have an effect on DHFR. Similarly, you can see estrogen receptor. You will see the alignment and all these molecules. These are the drug molecules, and these are the codes. For example, CM4A4D are the drug bank database code. Database code. Similarly, for adenosine deaminase, you will see this alignment, actual alignment, and you will see that most of the molecules that which we figure in this alignment in a 30 million database of drugs, of total drug molecular database, most of them are already known drugs of this particular receptor, or some are unknown drugs but newly identified ones. So what you can see it in bold are the already identified drug molecules of these receptors, and what you can see in not so bold are the one is yet to be identified. So you can see that this algorithm is working beautifully. And this is how you compare with the standard such tools like MDL keys and TSS and Tanimato coefficient. TSS is our own code, which we call time sequence analysis. And these are the targets that which we have experimented. This is a testimony of how well our system or our algorithm is working. So the summary is like this. When you suppose you are working in a drug industry, and if your manager or the company wanted to have a molecule, and he is asking to search a molecule with a hydrogen bond donor at 3 o'clock and an acceptor at 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock, then you can write that in a paper in a string, and then you can get back to the molecule in 3 dimensions. So this is the whole idea. And this entire work is published in molecular informatics with collaboration with Professor Andreas Bender of Cambridge University in United Kingdom. And with that, I end the first lecture. I think I have one more lecture at 8 o'clock. And my time is given is 7:50. I think I'm on time.
Yes, sir. You are up to the time, sir. So your talk about this canonicalization and your, how this molecule to time can be changed from 3D to 1D is very informative. Was actually very informative. Sir, if you want to continue, then you can continue. And if you want to have a 10 minutes break, you can have a 10 minutes break also.
Yeah, we can have it in not an issue. If you have any questions, I can take questions on this particular thing.
Dear participants, it would be very good if you can have any questions related to the recent presentation that sir has taken. We can have 1 or 2 questions meanwhile the break is going on. You all can open your mics and can ask questions, or you can just drop a text message on the chat box so that I can read it on your behalf also. That can also be done. Any questions from the participants?
Hello.
Yeah, Vartika.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, like, this is the reductionist approach, sir. May I know if there are any other approaches too for the canonicalization process? Yes, sir.
Canonicalization, I do not know, but there are other approaches for identifying or for quantifying quantifying the structure or the chemistry of different drug molecules. One is you can find out the tanimeter coefficient by making use of the SMILE sequence. The second one is called MDL keys. All these tools we are using regularly in our laboratory. So there is no tool which essentially does the time sequence. The time sequence is our fantasy idea. I think I have given you the course of development of that idea, because most of the time I was talking about the fantasies, like fancies and fantasies, rather than the science per se, or the algorithm.
But the way you taught us that how a 3D or 3D structure can be converted to 1D, that was the most important thing, sir.
So did I answer your question, by the way?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
So one question I have, that the tools that you have you suggest that can be used are openly available or are needed to
be? They are openly available, number one. Number two, the paper, I mean, basically the 3 stories I have told you are 3 different publications. And in that publication, our publication has been shared with Dr. Parul and Dr. Manish. So you can, and that is available for the people who are attending this program. And the website where you can download this is also in that paper. So it is freely available and it is downloaded. All the tools are freely available. We don't own anything actually, you know, because we don't own time, so we have no right over time. So.
Yes. Any other questions, participants? I have, I guess, a question in chat box. Sir, there is a question from one of our participants, Pragya Anand. The question is that
I can read the chat box, Professor. I can read the chat box. If you have a molecule which is toxic, then what approach should be used to make it a druggable molecule? Well, I mean, if I were knowing it, then probably I would have been sitting in the boardrooms of some big big drug companies of sorts. Actually, it's not that easy as it seems to be. But there are tools and techniques available to roughly gauge the toxicity of a molecule. So there are certain computational tools available. But having said that, they are not complete. And see, one of the biggest problems of drug industry is that after going through all the initial phases of drug discovery, it may find toxic towards the final stage, you know. And by that time, the drug company must have already spent about 25,000 crores of rupees. And then the problem, and it will make a huge financial burden to those companies. Okay. So this is one issue. So we cannot exactly predict whether something will be toxic of sorts, but there are algorithms which can make, there are concepts which can make, for example, Lipinski rule of 5 or ADMET predictions. They are available actually. There are tools available, there are algorithms available, but the reality is beyond all these algorithms. So if we can have more and more algorithms, that's what our topic of discussion, artificial intelligence, then we can reduce the failure rate. And if we can reduce the failure rate, then we will have more success and we will may have to spend lesser amount of money for a drug. Because if a drug company is incurring a loss of 25,000 crores of rupees, where will it account it for? It will be accounted in other drug molecules. So it increases the price of the other drugs that it is selling, understandably, right? It has no other way to recover the revenue. So this is the whole idea, actually. I mean, so the whole idea is that how efficiently we can predict toxicity, we can predict efficacy and toxicity. I'm not saying toxicity alone. How efficiently we can predict efficacy and toxicity is the key. So all these tools and techniques are basically attenuated to address that fundamental problem. So we are in the course of that journey, rather than we are not at the end. We are somewhere in the middle of that journey. I can see the second question from Mala Trivedi. Many of the plant molecules are not available in databases. However, herbal drugs are considered as potential drug molecules. What are way out in such cases? Actually, there are now a series of initiatives, especially from Ayush Ministry, they specifically work on Ayurvedic formulations and herbal medicines, and there are significant advancement in this thing. I'm actually sitting in some of their committees, actually, and we have their project also. So I can tell you with confidence that there are significant improvements in last, say, 5 to 10 years in those front of plant molecules and herbal drugs.
Any other questions? No more questions, sir. I guess we can proceed towards our session 2.
All right. One second. Is it good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you have seen the reductionism in drug molecules, actually drug discovery has 2 parts, right? One is a protein or a target, and other is a drug molecule. So this is the other side, the protein side. Okay, we have discussed the drug side. Now let's see how reductionism is operating on the protein side. And we are discussing about the structure-based barcoding of protein structures. Okay. Now I'm sure that all of you have experienced in one way or the other barcode. Actually, barcode was first introduced in 1947. And if I remember it correctly, it is first patented in 1950 or 1951. And barcodes were not in operation for, not used rather, till 1970 of sorts. And in 70s, barcodes were used in shunting yards, railway shunting yards in United States, in order to identify the succeeding compartments in passenger trains. And that was only purpose. And then it started using in departmental stores and supermarkets in 80s in United States. And later on, it was adapted as a credible tool of identification of substance, starting from its nature to its manufacturer to its price. Almost all informations are encoded in a barcode, you see. So we have another fancy idea. So this is the second fancy thing. Like fancies, we are actually talking about the concept of reductionism, fancies and fantasies of science. This is what you can see on the left side is a protein structure, and the fantasy thought is like, can we make barcode, or can we represent the protein structure as a barcode. Okay, you know that what all information is available in a barcode. If you can shine an IR scanner, then naturally you will have all the information, including the price. Most of the time we are interested is in the price. But there are other informations also in that barcode. Similarly, can we have a complete structural information as much as possible in the form of a barcode? So this is also a kind of a canonicalization. This is also kind of a reductionism. So you are reducing a three-dimensional structure, a very complex structure of a protein, to a barcode representation. Okay. So this is the idea. This is another two molecule, and these are their respective barcodes. Now I will tell you how these are being made. Okay. First and foremost, we have to observe the molecule in 3 dimension. You can observe the molecule in 3 dimension and try to have it, to see it in a perpendicular fashion in a computer screen. And then what you can see is like you will be able to see these molecules in the way in which it is depicted in the picture. Okay. Now, once it is there, you know a series of secondary structures. So a protein tertiary structure or a fold is a series of individual secondary structure informations. So this secondary structure, for example, a beta sheet followed by a beta strand, then again a beta sheet, then a helix. So a structure is rather complex. So protein has different structural organizations: primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary structure, and quaternary structure. So secondary structures are mostly helices and beta sheets. And what you can see is a representation of a molecule that is already known about how this molecule is represented in space. Okay. Suppose if we have this information, first is to translate it into this fashion. And then if you have this information, then what you can do is that you can present this, that how different secondary structure elements starting from N terminus to C terminus or vice versa, how they are arranged in space. Okay. So initially you present it as something called a TOPS diagram, but you can see it in the middle of the slide are called TOPS diagrams. And this is already known thing actually. So there are a lot of tools available to convert the molecule to a TOPS diagram. So once it is converted to TOPS diagram, then you can convert it into something that which we call as an AN code. AN code is called an alpha numero code. We have defined it ourselves. And this AN code on to the right means D. You can see an IN code. This alpha numero code has some information associated with it. First information is which secondary structure it starts with. So for in this slide, what you can read is S0101 means 01 is the first secondary structural segment, and 01 belongs to the first sheet of sorts. So S0101 means it is the first sheet of the first secondary structure, which is from a sheet. And then 0201 means it is a second strand of the same sheet. It is the same secondary structure, 01, but it is a second strand. And the next, what it shows is that it is moving to the third one, which is a helix, which is a third secondary structure. That's why it is called H03. And it is a part of the first structure itself. And then S04 means it is a fourth secondary structure, but it is a part of the first beta sheet unit. So similarly, you can convert it into a string of alpha numero code. So this is also a variant of what we have discussed in the first phase of the lecture. We were converting it into a string representation. Here also we are converting the structural representation to a string representation. Now, so is that all? If this is the case, then it will only give you an idea about the secondary structure. It won't give you the topology or how it is arranged in space. So for that, we need to have another metric. And the second metric is the following. If they are coming very close, like, if it is a parallel beta sheet, for instance, what we are next what we are measuring is that between these secondary structural elements, what is the angle? Because if you know what is the atom at the N terminus and what is the molecule, what is the atom at the C terminus, and if you have x, y, z coordinate, you can assume that it is a vector. Now, if you have two vectors, you can find out what is the angle between those vectors. It is that simple, actually. So from the angle between subsequent vectors in a series of secondary structures, you can fix the distance or the spacing between individual bars. So these bars in the barcode are representative of secondary structures, and the space between them are representative about how they are oriented in space. So this is how the entire structure is being encoded. Okay, so this is what you can see. This is an example of a protein called dihydrofolate reductase. It's an enzyme actually of dihydrofolate reductase. And what you can see is this particular enzyme in different organisms, starting from bacteria all the way to Homo sapiens, to human beings. And this is also a study that which we have conducted. And this study actually tells like how the secondary structural organizations and the fold is changing when the same protein is evolved in life, like I mean, starting from amoeba or bacteria all the way to human beings. Right? So like we all know how they are evolved structurally, we all know how they have evolved intellectually, but this is an experiment how they have evolved structurally from the point of view of one protein, or how this one protein has evolved structurally over the course of evolution. So that is the idea. So as you can see that most of them, the structure is relatively the same, but there are differences also. So there is an evolutionary information rather hidden in this barcode evolution. That is what you can understand from this thing. So from the evolution of this barcode, you can find out how the evolution of life has happened from the perspective of a single protein. Because what we see is from the perspective of the total human being, right? Or total organism, right? How an amoeba is different from bacteria, how a bacteria is different from a virus, how a virus is different from anything that which we like a mice, a guinea pig, a monkey, a human being. So how this is evolved, we know how it is structurally evolved, phenotypically evolved, but this is probably an investigation about how a single protein is evolving during the course of simulation. Similarly, this is another one of dihydrofolate reductase. In this study, what we have found is that upon ligand binding, there are different ligands for dihydrofolate reductase. Folic acid is its natural ligand, and there are different drug molecules also. You have seen it in the phase 1 about DHFR and what are the drug molecules that it binds to. How different drug molecules, when different drug molecules are binding to, or different ligands are binding to a protein, how its structure is changing, or how its structure is responding to that binding process. As you can see that most of the time the response to binding is relatively the same, which shows that it has one or maximum two binding sites where which a drug can come and bind. So these are the informations that are rather hidden or latent in such a study, and what you can deduce from such an exercise. And this work is published in Protein Science in 2014. And this, incidentally, probably they have liked it, and they have made this as the cover page of that particular edition of Protein Science magazine. So this is the second story. Maybe I can stop here for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever to take questions from this particular story. And then I will move on to the third story.
Sure, sir. Dear participants, if you have any questions related to this presentation, the session is open. Any questions? Sir, I guess we do have. No, we don't.
There is a question for you. There is a suggestion for you. Please refresh your internet browser. Probably, I think that is not for me.
Not for you, sir. It is for Nirja Srivastava, one of the participants. Because at times, because of slow internet connectivity, the browser stucks. Or
That's fine. That is understandable. That's all right. That's all right.
Dear participants, if you have any questions, the session is open. You can either unmute yourself and can ask question directly to the sir, or you can even write your question on the chat box so that the question can be answered.
Okay, shall I move on to the next story then?
Sure.
If any question is there, we can have it after that.
No problem, sir.
Okay. Okay, this is the third story. Third story is about it's a third fantasy, you can call it. Like I mean, is about mapping the geometric evolution of a protein folding motor. Okay. In 2005, in connection with the 125th anniversary of Science magazine, Science, as you know, is one of the most prominent science magazines, Science and Nature. And in connection with their 125th anniversary, it has got into a very interesting exercise. It asked 125 scientists in the world, globally, and asked them to suggest 125 unanswered questions in science. 125 unanswered questions in science. And one of the questions is this: how protein folds? So what is generally known as a protein folding problem. Because you know that if a protein is not folding to the native state, as you can see on the left side of the right diagram, only the native state of the protein is the functional one. And if it is not in the functional structure or the functional form, or this in the native state, then it becomes partially folded state, and they become dysfunctional. Means the protein is functional only when it is in the native state. And if it is not, and it can cross over to form oligomers, amyloids, aggregates, etc. There are a lot of diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, the CJ disease, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. All these diseases are in one way or the other. Many demential disorders, you cannot call it as a disease, they are disorders of sorts. Disorders are in one way or the other related to misfolding and aggregation and amyloid formation of proteins. So this is a healthcare problem, actually. This is understanding how protein folds is a scientific problem, and understanding how protein unfolds is a healthcare problem, you see. So that is why it is one of the 125th unanswered questions in science. And recently, we have seen a report in 2021 about a significant advancement of DeepMind's AlphaFold 2 solves the long-stood protein folding problem. And I quote from the magazine of Artificial Intelligence and Deep Learning. And I quote again, the protein folding problem is finally solved through DeepMind's AlphaFold. And again, I quote, artificial intelligence has changed the way science is done by allowing researchers to analyze the massive amounts of data that modern scientific instruments generate. And they used the DeepMind, this Google's AI platform to solve the protein folding problem by making use of the protein data bank database consisting of 150,000 protein structures. Whatever it is, that is not my topic of discussion because it is somebody else's work anyway. It is published in Nature magazine in 2021, and it was a newspaper news, big time. But the point I am trying to say is that in this solution by DeepMind, there is a problem that it doesn't tell exactly why it is so fast, because one of the mysteries of protein folding is that protein folds to its native structure, functional form, so fast in less than a second. Whereas if you systematically sample across, it will take about 10 to the power of 17 seconds or 10 to the power of 14 years, 10 to the power of 14 years to complete the folding process. So DeepMind doesn't answer that particularly, but we have a fantasy to talk about related to that particular thing. And that is about a protein as an Enigma machine. Enigma machines are first used in World War II by German forces. So Enigma machines are kind of crypto languages, so that even if this particular message is leaked, the enemy forces will not understand actually what the communication message is actually. So that is particularly an Enigma machine. So protein folding process was an enigma for many, many years. And protein is therefore an enigma machine in itself. And people who have done basic biochemistry course know that protein structure is basically understood in terms of its dihedral angles, phi, psi, chi1, chi2, etc. dihedral angles. Okay. Now what we have found is that what we did is that I will tell you what we did actually. What we did is that we mapped the phi, psi, chi1 and chi2 angles. And we remapped the Ramachandran diagram. As Ramachandran diagram is generally phi versus psi, phi psi. It's a phi psi map, as we all have learned it. So we made all those combinations of phi versus chi1, phi versus chi2, phi versus psi, then psi versus chi1, psi versus chi2, etc. And how we have mapped is that we have used the same database that AlphaFold people have used. There are about 150,000 strong structural database available in PDB. And we pruned it and avoided all the redundant ones and made it about 25,000 structures. And with this structure, we have made a systematic investigation that how the dihedral angles or how geometry is changing when a sequence is getting into the helix. So it is getting into the helix is H-3, H-2, H-1. And H are the amino acid residues that are in the helix. And then H+1, H+2, H+3 are the amino acid residues when it is leaving the helix. So we wanted to find out how the dihedral angles are moving like a wheel in a machine, in a mechanical device, when it is forming a helix and when it is leaving a helix, or during helix formation and helix breaking. Similarly, in sheet formation and sheet breaking, there is a structural evolution directly dictated by phi psi dihedral angles. So the same thing that you can see in a sheet as well. What you can see it in the bottom is the phi and psi and chi1, chi2 combinations in a sheet. And what you can see on the left hand and right hand side is how a molecule is structurally evolving when it is getting into a sheet structure and how it is evolving when it is coming out of the sheet structure. Okay. So what it actually gives, it gives you a series of rotational objects or rotors. Okay. Rotors like this, as you can see it in this picture. So they are rotational objects or rotors based on the dihedral angles. These, what are rotating here? The bond is rotating. So these bonds can be assumed as rotations or rotational isomers or rotors. And the folding of a protein is a summation of cooperative interactions between these rotors or cooperative movement of these rotors. So all these rotors cooperatively move for a common cause, and that common cause is what you call a folded structure or an equistate structure. So this is our hypothesis. So when you do that, what is the basic problem of protein folding is that how a one-dimensional sequence dictates a three-dimensional fold. So when you do this exercise, I will quickly get into the result or the essence of it. What you can get is the amino acid preference for defined structures. So our question is how amino acid sequence defines a structure is a protein folding problem. So this is partially an indirect answer to that thing, that individual amino acids have definite basin preferences. Individual amino acids have definite dihedral angle preferences. Individual amino acids have definite geometrical preferences. Well, in that case, then you can use this information in redesigning a structure. You can use this information in designing new protein molecules. You can use this information in sequence alignments. So this is one such attempt. Like, So we have used this, we have quantified this information. I have shared the paper with you, and the quantification routine is available in that. I'm not going into the details of it. But when we quantified it, what we got is a substitution matrix. And you all have, people who have learned bioinformatics must be familiar with substitution matrix like Blossom matrix and PAM matrix, which are basically based on chemistry. But this is probably the first of its kind, which exactly deals with the rotors and the structural parameters, creating a substitution matrix, which can be plugged in any sequence alignment tools. Okay, so this is that substitution matrix. We have 3 substitution matrices based on 3 different algorithms: MITMAT1, MITMAT2, and MITMAT3. And for your interest, this is how these substitution matrices are fares against the standard substitution matrices like Blossom or PAM matrices. And this thing is published in it's a paper in mapping the geometric evolution of a protein folding motor. And we are comfortably using MITMAT matrices, and we are getting very good results, sometimes even better results than Blossom matrices, because there is an innate sense of structural evolution encoded in MITMAT matrices. All right. So that is about the third story. And this is our laboratory, Molecular Informatics and Design Laboratory in Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. We work on diverse aspects of science. We work on computational biology. We work on network medicine. We work on drug delivery vehicles. We work on bio-nanotechnology. So these are the areas where we work on. And these are our students who have contributed to the larger cause of the laboratory and the specific works we have described in picture. What you can see it in this picture is an aerial view of the academic blocks of IIT Guwahati. What you can see on the other side is the mighty river Brahmaputra. We are on the shores of Brahmaputra, and you are welcome to visit us. So thank you so much for listening, and appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative session. Participants, sir, there is a question from one of our participants. Sir, how TOPS model and AN code of proteins are generated? Are there any specific tools or server?
TOPS model, there are a lot of programs available in the net for TOPS model, but AN code cannot be generated. AN code is our this thing. For generating alphanumeric code or AN code, the entire program is downloadable. You can take the code. I mean, you can do whatever you want with the code, no problem. So our code can generate AN code from the TOPS diagram, so no problem. You can download it from Probar. iitg.ac.in/Probar is the website. It is there in that paper also. Paper is shared with the organizers. They will share it with you. So you can download the code, and you can use that code for generating the AN code.
Dear participants, any other questions? There is one more question.
I think there is one more question from Gaurav Verma.
Yes, sir.
Pharmacophore modeling used few parameters, but if we really want to improve the quality of molecule, what approach should start with? Pharmacophore modeling used few parameters, but if we really want to improve the quality of molecule, what approach should we start with? I did not understand the question of Gaurav Verma. If Gaurav Verma can open his mic and ask this question or explain his question, then I will probably try to answer it, if possible.
Gaurav, you can open your mic and can ask question directly, sir. Gaurav, am I audible to you?
Okay, sometimes it happens. Probably the microphone may not be working.
Might be, sir, might be.
What I can probably make out is that because most of these tools are in one way or the other directly attenuated to pharmacophore modeling, pharmacophore-based modeling, because it is a pharmacophore that is, at the end of the day, making a physiological effect, or the structural content of that pharmacophore, or pharmacophore and its structure, pharmacophore and its spatial representation, or its spatial in space, how it is mutually organized or mutually arranged, is what determines the efficacy of a drug molecule. So that is how it is actually been looked into. Now, to really want to improve the quality of molecule, what I understand is that if you want to improve the quality of drug discovery and development, right? For that, we need to have new methods and techniques that are required beyond pharmacophore modeling, if that is what he meant. But having said that, at the end of the day, it all boils down to pharmacophore only, because what gives a physiological effect is pharmacophore. So I'm not very sure about how far we can go away from pharmacophore.
So I have one question from your second story. So applications of protein barcoding.
Ideally, actually, we wanted the barcode, though I have yet to write to PDB. We wanted it to be incorporated at least in the beginning in two places. One is in protein data bank, where and the structure is being shown. You will have a barcode also, protein barcode also is shown. But we have not communicated to them. It was then I moved to some other projects, and I sort of, I don't know. That is one thing. Second thing is that if you want to know the structural information when you are buying a protein, for example, suppose you have a protein in a bottle, and if you want to have, there is no way that you know what structure it is, what is the structure of it. So if you have the protein barcode also in the label, then the scientist or the concerned researcher will know, okay, what kind of a protein is it, etc. So these are the two avenues. But having said that, I have not pushed it to have that happen. That is probably, I don't know, I was lazy to do that. I didn't try to do that. But at some point of time, we will have to write to protein data bank people to incorporate this also in their sources, because PDB has such resources always contributed by different scientists across the globe. So it's quite possible, but we have yet to write it. Actually, we have not done that.
Participants, if you have any questions, this session is open. You can either unmute yourself or can directly write in the chat box for the questions. All right, I guess there are no more questions from the participants, sir. On behalf of everyone, I would like to thank you again for taking this session with us and gracing the event with your presence. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, especially in an evening. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Can I leave the meeting? That's fine.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dear participants, I will be sharing a link with you all, which is to be made as attendance link. You all need to fill that form before 10 p.m. The attendance will be considered for those participants only whose form is filled before 10 p.m. Thank you, everyone.